to Expanding Consciousness with your host, myself, Anjula, and I am so honored to be here today with Dr. Linda Bender. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And Dr. Bender is actually a veterinarian international, animal advocate, educator, and healer. So, okay, so how did you get to be all of those things? Can you give us a little bit of a background story of your journey into this work?
I'd be happy to. I combine three loves in my life. Of course, my favorite is my love for animals. And I have an immense love for travel. And I've been on a mystical journey my entire life. And actually I was giving an interview not too long ago, and someone said, you know, what was it like? When did you first connect to animals? And I thought about it and I had no answer. I really could not remember a time before. I was a nature girl growing up in New Jersey, and I was very fortunate because I had an orchard in the backyard and woods, and so all sorts of creatures would come, and I was often outside in the wild with them, and I just connected naturally. And there's a story that I put in the book, and thinking back, when did I connect? Could I come up with something? And I did come up with a story of me rescuing a tiny little bunny out in the wild. And it was about 2 a.m. and I heard screaming, not human screaming, but I got my parents up. We went outside, and there was this tiny little hump in the grass, and it was a baby bunny. And Mom was gone, and I brought that little bunny in and held it here close to my heart.
That's beautiful.
And said, I'm going to stay up with you all night. And of course I fell asleep, but before I did, I had an amazing, overwhelming experience of love that I really couldn't have felt other than with this little creature. And I learned that that little creature gave my life meaning, and that love was really, really at the core of it. I couldn't have explained that as a little kid, but it never left me.
And that makes so much sense. You know, for me personally, I only just not too long ago had my first animal companion, and you know, so reading your book, my first ever, yes.
Wow.
And reading your book, which is absolutely fabulous, Animal Wisdom, it's a must read. I mean, I think it's, you know, some people are like, well, I'm not a big advocate or a big educator, or I'm not like animal crazy, but I just love my cat or I just love my dog. Okay, this book is still for you as well. I do have to say, because it really resonates. I would love for you to talk a little bit about our oneness and how we are connected, and also address the superior, inferior type of conflicts humans have with animals, because I have come across that a lot as well, and I've heard a lot of, you know, we have dominion over the earth, and we have dominion over animals, and it's kind of like, no, I kind of feel like we're all here holding each other's hands, you know, and it's not just humans are superior to Mother Earth or to animals. So would you just discuss that a little bit, the superior, inferior type of complex we somehow developed?
Well, I think that we've done this. Indigenous cultures didn't lose that connection. You know, for the longest time, animals lived even indoors. You know, cattle, pigs lived inside the home with people for warmth. You know, we're species that are meant to live together and share. But what we've done, in particularly our Western religions, somehow something got skewed somewhere. And that's when we decided to claim dominion over other beings. And then we have the militant atheists in science who, for the longest time, hopefully it's going away now. They're still out there, actually raging quite loudly because they are becoming so outdated. Saying that everything is dead, all matter is dead, and we're just random, neural networks firing, all of us, and for some odd reason, we as humans uniquely have consciousness. So we've got these two ideas going on that are both saying, I guess we humans are superior. So that indicates, does it not, that everything else is here for our use. And so we have not only used, we've abused. And all we have to do is look around today and see what that has resulted in. But yes, that is exactly what we have done. And now people are coming out, particularly in science, saying, well, that's not true. And there's the research out there with animals. Dean Radin, Sheldrake, so many scientists are proving, peer-reviewed reports that we are all connected. Protons are connected throughout the entire universe. Everything is alive. Everything is connected. There is nothing separate. That's the reason. And we humans are the only ones who really have unplugged from that knowledge. The natural world has never forgotten that. So we hopefully, and that's why I do what I do, is teaching, let's remember who we really are.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the indigenous people, actually, because I recently stopped eating land animals. I felt called to do it, and I felt a cleansing within my physical body and other bodies. And one of the major things for me was, it wasn't about right or wrong or judgment or dictating. It was more so about me putting into my body animals under the conditions that I was putting into my body. So the indigenous, so when I speak with people and so on, they're like, oh, but everything's alive, so you can't have anything then. And I said, no, it's very different. And I can't explain it because it felt very much more spirit-led for me, on my personal journey.
Right.
But what became clear was that there was so much toxic fear, drugs, antibiotics, bad treatment of these animals, and then I'm putting it into my physical body. And it's funny because my younger brother had told me years ago, he's always been vegetarian, and he said, they're really in fear when they die. And when they die in fear, that's going into your body when you eat it. And I just remember just dismissing him, like, yeah, okay, whatever, continue eating. And then now, years later, it actually clicked to me, and it made sense. And, so a lot of people compare it to the indigenous people because they did eat animals, but it was done so differently, with respect, with honor. So could you discuss a little bit about the consumption of animals and the way it's being done now? Not to say it's right or wrong to consume animals. I always looked at it as it was, it was an offering of self and receiving, and this type of a dynamic of asking permission, thanking, and so on. And I don't see that. I barely see people bless their food before they eat it anymore, So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, as a veterinarian, we learn early on about the food animal industry, and it was, it's actually gone from bad to worse. Because of economic expediency and the numbers of humans who are eating meat and the amount of meat that we're eating. But it's this. Although I have for years recommended a vegetarian diet, now probably vegan, and have been so, I used to be called the veterinarian weirdo back in the day. But I do promote, and I do believe that that is our only future. But the bigger point that you are addressing is an important point, because the argument, well, we can eat meat now because everybody always ate meat, it's a totally different experience for the animals and for the human and for what we're ingesting. Animals were respected. They were honored. The relationship was sacred. And in the wild, it still is. The prey-predator relationship is sacred, giving and receiving. And I talk about that in the book. And what we are doing, we are the cruel species. We are the ones who are not treating our prey in any way other than a horrific Nazi concentration camp horror. And so it isn't only when the animal is being killed or slaughtered, it's the entire life. Okay, imagine being a chicken, being born on an airplane, being in a seat for your entire life, strapped in, unable to move, and you die there, and that is your life. Okay, so an animal that we eat whose flesh has been riddled with hormones, antibiotics, and the stress hormones. We are ingesting that entire toxic package into our own bodies. And it cannot be otherwise. And I'm not speaking of my opinion. I'm speaking, it's physiology. It is what it is. So, for the cruelty alone, we should not be eating the meat. But think of what we're doing to our bodies. And all that anger and fear is becoming part of our bodies.
I mean, I think the collective consciousness is already so, I mean, there's two ways of it, you know, it is very rising up in love, but it's very heavy in fear as well as it is. So it's kind of like just adding to the problem.
It is. You know, I was having a conversation with Deepak Chopra, and it was about these same things. How can there be so much love and beauty and caring and compassion and so much horrific cruelty? Well, there are many different levels of consciousness that are existing on the earth. So it's our responsibility to be the best we can be to help. And animals teach us that too, that the power of presence, what we are putting out emotionally, is huge. It's immensely important.
Now, also, like you addressed in your book, we treat animals the way we treat ourselves. And, you know, I understand this concept, but in all honesty, I've always applied it to other humans, or if I'm going through a very deep symbolic phase, you know, I'll apply it to everything I see. But I never really kind of thought about it in the animal sense. And when I sat with the idea, it really resonated as a deep truth. So could you talk a little bit about how we treat animals and how it really is just a reflection of how we're treating ourselves?
You know, Gandhi once said, you know, a nation can be judged by the way its animals are treated.
We're in trouble.
When you can no longer see and feel the pain in the suffering animal's eyes, do you really think you are going to see that in a human? Is your heart not hardened to a place that is hardened to all life? It's a reflection.
Absolutely. And I think that you kind of nailed it, because I think it is the issue of hardened hearts, you know, because not being able to see or feel that in animals, in Mother Nature herself, you know, in our brothers and sisters, you know, and really, I think in ourselves, you know what I mean? To not be able to do that, I think, is quite one of the major issues. And then you also talk about the lessons we can learn, which I think you're kind of like starting to touch on already. So could you talk a little bit about the spiritual lessons? But I don't, you know, because I think you are very grounded as well, and your work is very grounded.
Have to be.
Yeah. So could you talk about, and I don't want to say spiritual lessons, because it's like, I think it is very much about grounding it here.
Totally.
We're on a planet that is in need right now of some stuff, you know.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is critical. You know, the New Age nonsense of nothing is real, we just need to lift out of here. I can only speak from my own life experience. I spent many years living overseas, helping animals, rescuing animals from the wildlife trafficking trade. Evil exists in this world. It may not exist in great reality, but it is alive and well on this planet.
Yeah.
I experienced it in the wild animal trafficking trade. There is also the human trafficking trade, and there's the drug trade. And the poaching of rhinos and elephants in Africa today, putting those animals as beautiful beings on the brink of extinction, is the cause of the drug trade and all these other trades. So, boots on the ground. We are here for a reason. We are here to take those gifts that we've been given, those gifts and treasures in our hearts, and express them in the world. Why would we not? We are here to help our brothers and sisters. Not necessarily knowing the outcome, but showing up and becoming compassion in action. I personally cannot do otherwise.
No. You just described my, you know, well, she's not with me anymore, but you just described my cat, because it was just like showing up, not knowing what's going to happen, in compassion. But
paws on the ground.
And I was just like, these are all spiritual lessons that animals can teach us.
These
you know?
are the spiritual lessons that animals teach us. They're here incarnate with us. They're teaching us how to be here.
Yeah.
You know, they come to us from the other realm, but they're teaching us how to be better humans here, to be in our bodies. I tell a story of one of my great, quote, out-of-body experiences with my horse riding out in the bush.
Beautiful.
In Africa. But the entire time I was grounded in my body, but I was still able to experience the oneness. So it isn't getting out or suffering. It's blending both. It's keeping your thoughts high, but your feet or your paws planted firmly on the earth. Doing the work that needs to be done here and now.
Yeah, that absolutely makes so much sense. And I think it's interesting as well, because the spirituality and like we were saying, New Age or law of attraction, or, you know, all of this stuff, in one sense it's good, because it's kind of helping people wake up to our oneness and our source and so on. But then, so it has its use as well, but having been down that road as well myself, I honestly, it can be a really big escape from planet Earth as well. Like it can be such an escape mechanism from here and what's going on, and seeing things, and
completely.
And when I started to see that in myself and my own experience, you know, one of the things was I was extremely overwhelmed with the state of affairs here on Mother Earth. It is quite overwhelming.
And we want to run away. We want to.
I just gotta go back and meditate all day. Like, I'm too busy to take any action, you know?
I know. Or overwhelmed. Overwhelmed.
Overwhelming.
But, you know, Gandhi said something else, and it was, you know, in the ocean of suffering, what you do may seem insignificant, but it is immensely important that you do the work. And you're doing more than you realize, and animals help teach us that as well.
Yes, so could you speak a little bit more about that balancing act of being connected to spirit from above and Mother Earth, and actually taking action, spirit-led action here to the healing of the planet, you know, and our interconnectedness with nature and animals and so on. So I mean, you know, a lot of our viewers, I think, are curious about spirituality and oneness and so on. So just could we just kind of like discuss a little bit of how that actually fits in and how that all works together? And
it's a big question. Well, what animals taught me, I'll go back to my own personal experience. When I was working in both Africa and in Asia, trying to help animals that were poached, or attempted poached, and just the horrors in the belly of hell. It's pretty bad. And there were even occasions when I didn't want to live anymore and be on this planet. And I thought, I can't even function myself. How can I help anyone else?
Yeah.
And for somebody who's spent a life healing, it's shattering. But what I realized and what animals taught me is that grounding our spirituality comes this way. We open to spirit, but we can only accomplish anything through going into our own hearts. So we've got to start there. And when we're in our own hearts, two things happen. We allow ourselves to experience whatever it is that's going on out there. Some of it's beautiful, but a lot of it isn't. It's what I went through. And it's in that heartbreak, that ruin of heartbreak, that we walk into. And we allow. A lot of people shut down right there. But we have to have faith through our hearts to know, have faith that we can work through it. And Rumi said, in the ruin of heartbreak is where we find a diamond of passion that allows us in the world to raise the dead. That's where we get our courage. That's where we get our strength. And that's what we put out to the world. And what I learned from the Zulus in South Africa is that you take that strength, you take that spirit, that light that comes in, that's what you send out to the world as your work. And so what's out there, whatever it is, whatever is going on in your world, you can look at, you can deal with, but it doesn't suck you in, because you are the light that is offering the healing and the work, and your gifts out to the world. And that keeps you strong, and that keeps you resilient. And resilience is a key word today in our world that we need. We need to be resilient in the face of what's going on in our world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I wish we had more time, because I would just love to talk so much more, and more specifically about animals and nature and our oneness with them. But do you have anything specific that you would like to share before we wrap up?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you go to lindabender.org, you can check out what mischief I'm up to.
Okay.
There are just two things I'll mention. One is a project I do with unexplained powers of animals. And that is so, as a scientist, I'm concerned that we put out to the world that our intuitive psychic stories, unexplained, come out and be shared and exposed. So we show the militant atheists or the dogmatic scientists that really what people say is paranormal is really normal.
Yeah.
What they say is supernatural is really natural, part of the natural world. So I invite people to look into that. And I also have my nonprofit From the Heart, and you can see about that on there as well, and the work I'm trying to do helping. And I guess what I always say to people is this: please do something to help animals. They need us now more than ever. Go into your heart, speak that voice, and don't be afraid to make a loud voice.
That's beautiful.
And go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we will definitely post all your website and bio and information. It should be in the text box below by the time this gets posted. And I'm just so grateful to have read your book, to have met you, to have shared time and space with you. And I hope we can dialogue again in the future one day at a little bit more depth. And yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for watching, and this is Expanding Consciousness with your host, myself, Anjula.